Hello and welcome to Split Second Learning. And today I'm so excited because my co-author and buddy, Professor Mark Johnson, drumroll, is here and live. And in case you don't know who the heck Professor Mark Johnson is, where have you been? Here he is. He's going to introduce himself. He needs no introduction. Mark, take it away. Who are you? Tell the people.
You've got us all nervous now with that drum roll and everything. um, well, who am I? I actually don't know. It's a big question, isn't it, Matt? Who am I? So my inner world is the world of Mark Johnson, Professor of Pain and Analgesia at Leeds Beckett University. Um, from what
33 years.
Well, we'll get on to that. I better say the accent and my persona is all grounded in Wallsend, which is in the northeast of England, close to Newcastle upon Tyne, or as we call it, Newcastle. Because Matt's also from that area. In fact, he's literally next
He
door.
born in Wallsend, yes.
There we go. There's a good chance I'll drift into Geordie, and you might need
There's
to put.
every chance you'll drag me kicking in either way.
So the subtitles might need to go on. So my background is, well, I started to get interested in science when I was young. School at the age of 14, I wanted to be a scientist. Ended up going to a physiology department at Newcastle University on one of those day trips that they take school kids to. At the age of 17, up to that point, I didn't know what a university was. I didn't know whether I'd be going to university, but I saw an experiment being done in that physiology department on the nervous system, and that was it. I was hooked. So I ended up doing a physiology degree at Leeds University with a massive interest in how the nervous system does its stuff. And then from that point, I've sort of career-wise stuck in the field of pain. Everything to do with any aspect of pain interests me now. Initially, it was how the nervous system was responding to what we call noxious stimuli, things that might harm our tissue. But over time, I've moved out of tissue and gone now into the culture, the mind, and the settings in which pain is experienced as a living phenomenon. So I've really decided to move out of pure research and went into a sort of a teaching research institution in the sort of early 90s, did my PhD University in Newcastle upon Tyne, and then moved to Leeds Beckett University, and I've been there ever since and love it, absolutely love it. So I'm an educationalist at heart, Matt, if all be known. But I've done research, I do empirical research, ran a lab and have just recently closed it down. So I've been right the way from sort of animal studies right the way through now to groups of people, communities of people. So I span all aspects of pain. Yeah. So there's a starter for 10. You can start pulling threads if you want, Matt.
There's a lot of threads there, Mark, isn't it? I mean, obviously, anybody listening to us who's from the north of England will realise we're speaking in the only language known, which is English. However, if they're from the south, they will be failing terribly as Google Translate fails the subtitles. But so we'll start for 10. You and I, can you remember you and I where we
Aye,
first met?
aye, oh, it's amazing. Whenever people ask us about questions that involve remembering something, I immediately go, how the hell does that happen? So as soon as you've mentioned that, Matt, I've got in my mind's eye an image of you with a flip chart. I couldn't tell you what you were
Chart
wearing,
and a
like
pen.
at
No,
Gosforth, just next to the Gosforth racecourse in a hotel.
yeah.
And I think it was the North of England Pain Society meeting or something
It
like
was a
that.
pain society or something,
Aye,
yeah.
aye. So,
And
and yeah, yeah, and of course, you blew my mind away because what you did was, what I love is try to change people's perspectives on stuff. People say
So,
what takes you to work each day, what gets you into work, and it's the idea of somebody changing me perspective on something. So you did that because you came into that session and didn't do the traditional, the biopsychosocially type stuff that we do in the Pain Society meetings, but you came in with a much more trauma-informed approach, but it was all metaphorical. It was all metaphorical in terms of the language you were using was different language, and the storytelling was just opening up all sorts of avenues of possibilities in my head. And it was all done in a Geordie accent, so that, I'm going to resonate. I'm going to trust information coming from where I came from,
the mother tongue.
the mother tongue. So yeah, I mean that's really what kicked it off. And I always reflect on this at the end. At the end of the session, went up and had a chat with you, which I generally don't do. I tend not to do that. And you nailed this, which it's stuck with us forever. It's trauma within me now. You said, "Yeah, I knew you were a professor," and I'm thinking, I look now like a professor. I don't act like a professor. I don't talk like a professor, but clearly I do.
Promise you, anybody that's actually watching this will look at your attire and say, "He looks like a." I have nothing in my wardrobe that would allow me to look like a professor. I promise you. My purchasing power doesn't allow me to say, what would a professor wear? What could I put on that would look absolutely professor? I'll point you even to Einstein, right? That was Einstein. And Einstein was reported to someone said that, why does everybody keep staring at me so? And the response was, well, get your hair cut. It was because he could, he did, and he looked like a nutty professor. And you, my friend, my darling friend, you are definitely a nutty professor, right?
One of these
And
days, Matt, one of these days, I'll come on and I'll be in a tweed jacket, and I'll have a pipe, and I'll have them half moon ring glasses, and I'll talk proper.
those big eyebrows, right? Those big eyebrows on. I love it. I love it. Mate, I do have the eyebrows. So anyway, so
I've got no
back to
hair under
pain.
here, by the way. Sorry.
Let's get into pain, otherwise we'll kind of chat here because I'll be here all day, right? Obviously, my palms and the base of my foot, that's about all I've got. Um, so, pain. So we were chatting. I remember on that particular conversation, obviously, it was always a tough one when we're our colleagues, because some of them just need it in a box. And which study has this come from? How has it been approved? But at the time, Mark, this is a lot. This is many moons ago now, and I had joined the pain clinic in the northeast because at the time, I'm not sure of the status now, but at that time, the Freeman Hospital had the largest rate of amputees in Europe at that time. I was overjoyed. I was overjoyed because it meant they must have the highest number of phantom limb patients. So I'm like, oh, let me near your phantom limb patients. Because I thought that's a very simple study to do. They're writhing about in agony. You guys are doing whatever you do with your pills, etc. And then they're still writhing about in agony. And then they have a conversation with me and the pain vanishes. I thought that'd be such an easy one to do. And obviously, how naive was I? Because once I get chatting to you, suddenly everything that seems simple to the man on the street isn't that simple. It's not scientific. And I thought, goodness me, I love you to bits and I hate you at the same time because when you come to science, you've got a way of putting me under the microscope. You know, and really, I mean, you get the best out of me. I really, something, my head's going to pop because you and I, oh God, just settle for the answer. And will you? You will not. You keep pushing me. And I think you are probably destined for science. You want to be a scientist because you thought, oh, I could bully people dead gently without having to punch them. But you do it really well. And I think that relationship, it sort of started from day one, didn't it? Those questions of yours, they're good quality questions, and I can't ignore them. I have to go digging.
Well, digging's the key because science often isn't about digging. So, I mean, I could talk all over the place about, not the philosophy of science, but the game of science. One of the reasons we resonate, Matt, is because we are diggers, we are deep thinkers, we are trying to dig deeper and deeper and deeper. The thing about science is it should be self-correcting. So it should be that, science isn't about finding answers, it's finding out about what you don't know. And then it's about asking the right questions to get an answer that you can then ask questions about. So it's a process, it's not a thing of fact. And unfortunately, the game that's now played within society, it's modernity, is a game of science. So, I have a love-hate relationship with being a scientist. And I'm not a positivist, I'm a critical realist. So, I believe there's an objective thing out there. I believe there's objective electromagnetic waves, a thing of stuff. But I'm also clear that we cannot get full access to that because we're constrained by our evolutionary heritage. We only have a certain perceptual system, a system that makes sense of the world outside there to enable us to survive and reproduce. If we actually had full access to the electromagnetic spectrum, we would not be able to survive in the environment. We'd just be overwhelmed by incoming sensory information. So yeah, science is a one of those things that it's sort of uncoupled itself a little bit from normal people, but it's just what we all had when we were young: curiosity, asking questions. That's all science should be about: asking questions and then checking the answers, asking questions of the answers, and that's it. That's all I do. I just keep asking questions, which is dead easy. you know. Uh, and also, I have to come clean. I am hopeless at factual recall. So on that program Mastermind, you might remember Mastermind, where
Yeah.
you sit there and you've got, I don't know, 5 minutes or something, and you're just peppered with questions. You got to have.
Your chosen subject,
There you go.
the obvious.
Yeah, I couldn't perform on that. I just couldn't operate because I just don't have factual recall. So therefore, I think
What I
that's why I
found
gravitated.
because I've reread it. I don't know if you ever have the time, but if you do, rereading some of our articles. I mean, like the split second unlearning. The first article we put together. I thought, wow. I mean, I reread our articles, and I think we really put some effort in there. At the time, it's just hands on deck, isn't it? All hands on the pumps and and yet, and we're just glad to get the darn thing published.
It's brutal.
And
It's
we'll not
brutal. I
even
know
go down that road.
people watching, and I have lots of conversations with people, colleagues in academia, for example, who want to do research and want to publish, who haven't done it before. It's brutal. There's no other word for it. It's utterly brutal. If you're going to do anything that's got some sort of rigor to it and some sort of conceptual depth or whatever. And it's brutal because you're fighting against a whole load of forces like the peer review process. So it's much easier writing a book and self-publishing on Amazon because nobody sort of overviews it. It's pretty much, it comes out and off you go. Well, science isn't about that. It's self-correcting. So therefore, well before you get it to print, there's already been people looking at it and commenting on it. And of course, the more you're ingrained in it, as an author, I have to be able to put my name to something and be not only proud of it, but be confident that it's rigorous. It's not going to be correct necessarily, because, making mistakes is how we move forward. That's how you learn. Yeah, so the process is brutal, absolutely brutal. It was particularly brutal for me working with you, Matt, because I'm coming into a completely different field. In a field that, I'm not familiar with literature, with the way of thinking in that field. But I love it because it's all about perspectives. It's about perspectives,
See,
and
I
it's
think I can you see when I'm always in awe of you, because when one of your curveballs comes flying from the, and I think, oh, I thought, and just because I love again, this is where we get on, it's that ability to shift perspectives. And Mark will come in with one, and I think, oh goodness, like the whole weird science.
yeah.
Now that I thought, I touch on it and nothing else popped up, and then when you brought it back in again, and I'm gonna have to have a proper look at this, and I thought, wow, what about weird science? People are
Man,
listening. I'm
it's
just thinking
brilliant.
we might end up with a lot of people with chronic pain wanting to get into our podcasts,
Yeah. Where do you start with weird science? I guess the first thing I do with weird is just define the acronym, the abbreviation. So it's Westernized, Industrialized, Educated, Rich, Democratic Mindset. So it's a weird mindset. I've probably spelled it wrong. I mean, there you go. I'm now sitting here going, is it Westernized educated or is it Westernized industrialized? The way
I
that it
think it's
comes.
educated.
So it's a Westernized educated. See, and this is why I'm probably good at asking questions, but if you ask me to do a spelling test, no chance. Right. So Westernized educated. Westernized, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic mindset. Now, what I love people who make the invisible visible. Make the things you're blind to bleedingly obvious. And that was one that was a bleedingly obvious as soon as you realize that our normal at this moment in time, 2025, is living in a culture, in a cultural mindset, in a societal mindset of weirdness. We're westernized, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic in our mindset. We mightn't be, in terms of having a lot of money rich in our own particular setting. I might not be a rich person, but my mindset is engrossed in a society that has a culture of a richness. And if you compare that with what used to be called the developing countries, poverty in other parts of the world. So we're in Northern Europe, we're a part of the rich part of the globe. So that mindset is our normal. We cannot imagine a mindset that's not like that. It's really hard to jump out of that mindset and go into medieval mindset, for example. And in the medieval mindset, what we do is we sort of go, oh yeah, it must have been terrible in those days because there was poverty and they didn't have heating in the houses like we've got in this. No, that's their normal. That was just the norm. There was no other way. So that's quite interesting. I like weirdness because one of the things about weirdness is we've shifted our evolutionary heritage as human beings, which is entirely grounded as social beings and socially grounded in your genetic heritage, your kinship. We always lived in small local communities close to our families. And that has happened throughout all of our evolutionary history until very recently, until the scientific revolution, when we started to uncouple ourselves from that understanding that our mind, body, and nature were separate entities. Prior to that point, we sort of mixed mind and body and nature as one holistic thing. With science and the reductionist positivist approach where we can actually objectively start to detect things and measure them, we uncouple those three domains. And part of that uncoupling has led us to have what we call an impersonal pro-social environment. So nowadays, our modern world dictates that often we don't live closely with our family. We often live fragmented family units, that our mindset is aligned to societal regulations and policies and norms, the rules of the land, which means that, for example, if my brother murdered somebody, and he hasn't, by the way, but if he did, in the olden days, in the medieval times, I would have stuck by my brother. Whatever, if he's murdered somebody, he's murdered them for a reason, I stick with him. However, nowadays, I will stick with the rules of the land and potentially could rat out my brother and say, actually, he did murder somebody and he's wrong for doing it. And I will stick with the legal code that's very impersonal. So we've moved away from the kinship bonding towards this sort of individualistic bonding to these systems and structures that we've created as part of our modern civilized world. They're fantastic. They've helped us to get on with strangers immensely well, even though there's lots of wars going on. But that weirdness is a particular, it has a particular mindset. Science sits within that mindset. It's very analytical. It's very reductionist. One of the challenges with that reductionist approach is within science and within sort of knowledge generation now, we've become very subspecialist. Even in the field of pain, which is a subspecialism of something broader, of health, within the field of pain, you cannot be just a pain scientist. You have to be a neuro pain scientist or a genetic pain scientist or a psychology pain scientist. And so you get this sort of reductionism that ultimately then creates silos, which then means that nobody's seeing the big picture. So weirdness is just a great lens to look at modernity.
Because I was looking, because I mean, and we'll probably open up on another castle on just weirdness itself, but just if we just touch on the Westernised, because obviously some of my bestie buddies are Indian, yeah, and older than me and older than you, which is brilliant because they've got this wealth of knowledge. They're going back like thousands of years, and we're just like little babies, really, when it comes to medicine, etc. And you look at the Eastern, you look to the East, even to China, you know, the ancients of health, you know, and we even the biomedical model just over 100 years old. And we're trying, you know, fair enough, they might have the cash, but they're trying to kid on that theirs is the way. Would you not agree? It seems like, especially in recent years, that science is looking quite like a bit of a religion. What do you think? Over to you, Professor Johnson.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah. And simplicity just doesn't work, let's be honest. The whole reality that we live in is very complex, but we as humans need simplicity to be able to navigate our day-to-day activities. It's black and white, Newcastle United, you know, it's good and bad. We're seeing it play out a lot at the moment, you know, with polarized politics, polarity in societies. Yeah, and the biomedical, it's incredibly powerful. It's done incredible good, but also then it becomes consumed literally as part of our culture, which is driven by a capitalist, competitive, consumerism model. So therefore it becomes contaminated, its purity gets contaminated, and the nuance of it also becomes, you know, overly simplistic. And then people start to align with groups. One of the things humans like to do is have identities and be in group. Biomedicine, by very nature, will automatically then become an in-group thing. So one of my big things is trying not to be judgmental about these things, trying not to be overly simplistic about them. Things are
Yeah.
always very nuanced, but it goes back to the weird thing. One of the things that I think our weirdness did as a mindset through the sort of 17 and 1800s, so we became overly focused on tissue-based mechanisms. Now think of the word mechanism, it's mechanistic.
Yeah.
And
Mechanistic. Yeah.
that really is the analogy that we use, the metaphor that we use to describe our medicine, our bodies, as mechanisms. In recent times, and last 2-3 decades, it's starting to transform and transmute into a computer analogy, which is transmuting
Yeah.
now into some sort of data and algorithmy thing. So you've got to remember these things are all metaphorical when we talk about it. But going back to the mechanistic thing and the benefit it brought to our understanding of how our bodies work in terms of disease and pathology and injury, the benefits that brought to it meant that we became probably overly focused on it. And as in doing so, we dislocated the body from the mind. And then you get the dislocation of society, nature, from it. So you end up with a dislocated biopsychosocial. And then with the subspecialism driving forces as intellectuals, universities flourished, intellectuals flourished. To be on top of things, you had to have specific subject knowledge and subject expertise. And that's been a problem. And of course, at the same time, 1900s in particular, consumerism just took off.
Yeah.
And because that's the model that we use to finance our modernity. And that model has been fantastic because it's brought the living standards up of a lot of people to a very, very high level. But as with everything, it has a counter side. It'll probably peak and then it's starting to backfire again. But that's our normal. I'm not worried about it
Yeah.
because that's the normality
No.
in which we've been brought up. So there's just lots of complicated, big picture-y stuff going on. Yeah. Yeah.
So that, my friend, is going to be a wrap for this time. And
Oh,
I'm hoping, yeah, I can give only half an hour this time because we thought, well, because we can get well into the weeds very quickly. So if you guys have listened, this is me, Matt Hudson, and my good buddy, Mark Johnson. Should we always call you Professor Mark Johnson? That way people will say, oh, I was listening to a professor this afternoon. Yeah, but what do you think? I don't know. Two crazy Geordies having a bit of a natter. We'd like to say the likely lads and put it on our podcast, but obviously we'd probably get the BBC knocking on our door for some sort of membership or conscription fees or something. Yeah, so we won't bother. Right, so thank you, Mark, and we will
brilliant.
speak to you all soon.